Tonight, the two candidates fighting to make it into the White House will go head-to-head for the first time in what could be the crucial moment of the US election campaign.
The former President Donald Trump and the current Vice President Kamala Harris, that's the choice confronting the American people when they go to the polls on the 5th of November.
And in just under 2 hours' time, the pair will debate live on American TV from Philadelphia. Who will come out on top, we can't predict, but what we do know is that it could be pivotal in the campaign and therefore could have ripple effects around the world.
Tonight, on this Sky News special program, we'll bring you the debate live from Philadelphia.
And we'll have expert analysis and reaction from our studio guests, the Vice Chair of the Democrats Abroad UK, John Scardino, and the Chair of the Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson, as well as reaction from the Trump and Harris camps in the US.
But of course, it's the swing states that matter in this election, and the polls are telling us it's neck and neck. We'll get analysis from our man with the numbers, Lewis Goodall, at our Sky News election screen. Good evening and welcome to this special Sky News programme for the US presidential debate.
It's been a campaign like no other, but could tonight be the moment when one candidate makes a decisive break?
I'm calling on Crooked Joe to debate anytime, any place. We'll do it anywhere you want, Joe.
I'm not going anywhere. All right.
Breaking news coming into us from the United States, and President Joe Biden says he is stepping down from the US presidential election campaign.
For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation.
She is, as you know, the most radical left person. People don't know the real Kamala.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man.
Did you see her on television last night? This is going to be the president. This is going to be the president of our country. I don't think so.
America, we are not going back. We are not going back.
In a week from now, week and a half, I look forward to that debate very much.
Well, there we go. It's going to be a big night. It's going to be an exciting night. The battle lines have been drawn. The candidates are about to arrive at that debate hall in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. Mark Stone is there on the floor of that debate hall. Mark, you're good at this. Set the scene for us.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm really excited. It's going to be a night of jeopardy. Without any doubt, the mother of all presidential debates, to tee up the mother of all presidential elections. No doubt about that. We're in the spin room. Let's show you round. This is the size of 2 football pitches, absolutely vast. And through the course of the day, it has been filling up with journalists from all around the world. And you can see as we move around some of the studios that have been set up in the corner here as organizations from right around the world are preparing to broadcast here. It is called a spin room because of the people who will be in here spinning, people from both sides of the aisle here in politics in the United States who will be here as surrogates to the candidates, telling the world why they think that their candidate won. And what's really interesting is that we're seeing not just Democrats coming here to tell us that they think Kamala Harris is going to do well, but Republicans coming here as well. Republicans who are so-called never-Trumpers, Republicans who believe that Donald Trump is a threat to America and a threat beyond America. Not many of them but there are a few who have been here and who will be here later on today. 50 million people, Mark, watched the last debate, that disastrous debate, if you are Joe Biden, a debate in which Donald Trump turned up and was somewhat out of character in that he was not the combative Donald Trump that we have grown to know. Instead, he let Joe Biden effectively destroy himself. It was a debate, as you just said, which precipitated the end of Biden's campaign. Out of that came Kamala Harris, unopposed on the left of politics among the Democratic Party. She is now the candidate, and tonight she will go head-to-head with Donald Trump.
Right, and it's worth re-emphasising that these two have never met, and it is a night of real jeopardy, actually, for both candidates.
It is. You know, I wasn't aware until a week or so ago that they had never met. The reason is that the one occasion where they would definitely have met is the inauguration of Joe Biden just under 4 years ago. But remember, Donald Trump did not turn up to that inauguration, and circumstances meant that the two of them have never met face to face. But tonight they will. Tonight they will be in that debate hall. There will be no audience. They're on their own. Two podiums, one slightly higher than the other. Donald Trump is well over 6 foot, a giant of a man. Kamala Harris is much shorter, and so a decision has been made that there will be the podiums will be of different heights to allow them both to feel comfortable at their own podium. Donald Trump said a few days ago on his own social media site, Truth Social, that he didn't want Kamala Harris to have any sort of block to stand on. She doesn't have a block, but she has a shorter podium. One of so many little details that are fascinating around this debate. But look, I think tonight it's all about the undecided. It's about those people in the middle, Mark, who, yes, they know exactly what Donald Trump stands for because they've seen him for many years now. They are not totally sure what Kamala Harris stands for, what her policies are. She's really not been all that clear about her policies. It is true, Mark, that she has, over the course of many years in politics, at some stages of that period, she has been really very far left of centre. She's tacked to the centre over the course of her vice presidency, even more so over the course of the past few weeks of her candidate as candidate. But Donald Trump is still casting her as a far left liberal.
Mark, and I can assure you I don't have a block that I'm sitting on as I sit here next to Mark Austin, who is about 6 foot tall. No, exactly. I'd say that's probably the height difference that you're comparing between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris with Mark and I. But Mark, I just want to pick up on the point that you have made. It is a consequential debate, given what we saw and how crucial the last debate was. And as you say, this is a chance for Kamala Harris to really introduce herself to the American people and do so before Donald Trump defines her.
And I think that's been a problem, actually, over the course of the past few weeks since she has been the candidate. There have been a lot of calls for her to make clear what her policies are. What does she stand for? How can she cast some light between President Biden and her? Remember that 60% of the country, if the polls are right, want change. Well, she, as the continuity candidate, she is continuity because she's literally the sitting vice president. How can she present herself as offering that change when she is so closely attached to President Biden? I think that will be a wedge that Donald Trump tries to push tonight. He will also, as I say, again cast her as some sort of a dangerous liberal. I think what she will need to do is, yes, frame him as the dangerous right-wing candidate that she sees that he is, but also present some sort of a positive future, a future that, yes, picks up on President Biden's achievements as she would see them as president, but also casts herself as something new, something fresh, something different. She will need poise tonight to counter the street fighter that we know Donald Trump is, but she will also need policy.
OK, Mark, thank you very much indeed.
And of course, we will be speaking to Mark throughout the evening, but let's get straight to it tonight. Republican Congressman Mike Waltz for Florida's 6th District joins us live now from the spin room. It's really good to see you again, Congressman. We've spoken a lot over the years about Donald Trump and, your views and that sort of thing on him. But just give us a sense of how you think he's going to approach this particular debate tonight.
Well, I think he's going to draw a very clear contrast of what worked under his administration and what was working for the economy, for our southern border, in terms of reducing crime and certainly on foreign policy, and then what a disaster the last 3 years have been on all of those issues. The question, I think, is going to be which Kamala Harris shows up. Is it Vice President Harris that wants to selectively take credit for what she sees worked under Joe Biden, or will it be someone who's trying to cast her own policies, but since she hasn't had a press conference or any type of lengthy solo interview in the 2 months since she was a presumptive nominee, I think those will be kind of a surprise for everyone. I think it'll sound a lot like California Kamala, because that is what the future of progressive governance looks like. And I think President Trump's going to remind the world that when she was in the Senate, she was the #1 most left-wing progressive senator in the Senate. She was to the left of Bernie Sanders. She was to the left of Kamala Harris, according to nonpartisan organizations who rate senators' votes. So I think that will be laid out. The contrast will be very clear, and the American people will make those decisions.
Yeah, and Congressman, I mean, a lot has happened for Donald Trump in the last 4 years as well. And one of the things that Kamala Harris is really doing is trying to sell herself as this prosecutor. I mean, no doubt she's going to raise the felony convictions, for example. She's going to raise January 6th. She's going to raise, the claims and accusations of sexual assault, the business fraud. How do you think Donald Trump is going to handle all of this?
Well, if she raises those issues, I think President Trump is just going to stand by the facts that we've now had Supreme Court rulings that are going to throw a lot of those cases out. A number of them have already been lost on appeal, whether it's the documents case that was thrown out in South Florida, whether it's a Supreme Court case on immunity that you can't tie a president's hands that have now affected the New York case. But he's also going to point out that Joe Biden's #3 official in the Department of Justice resigned from a very senior post to go sit down in a municipal courtroom with a local district attorney to go after a political opponent. Look, I've served all over the world, in Africa and the Middle East. That's the type of thing you see in third world country. The mainstream media in the United States didn't really want to talk about it, but I think President Trump certainly will. And a lot of people can identify. You can't talk about an unfair justice system, but then say suddenly it was completely fair for President Trump. I think a lot of people are going to identify with a justice system that's tilted against them.
Yeah, Congressman, you were saying which Kamala Harris will turn up, questioning which Kamala Harris will turn up. I suppose there's also a question about which Donald Trump will turn up. Will it be the one who's going to behave himself, do as his advisors want and stick to policy, or will it be the Donald Trump who can't help himself and gets riled, gets upset and gets personal?
Well, we saw what happened with the debate with Joe Biden, and President Trump let Joe Biden sink himself. And I think he will let Kamala Harris try to explain her flip-flops, whether that's on fracking for gas that she's flip-flopped on, everything from that to crime on illegal immigrants to now even plastic straws. I think that's the side you're going to see. You're also going to see someone who talks about putting in record trade deals like the new NAFTA deal that he got done, she voted against, that talked about veterans reform, that lets veterans choose their own health care rather than relying on a sclerotic government system that her vice president picked, Tim Walz, voted against. So you're going to see him talk about that. You're going to see him talk about unleashing American energy. We currently have a ban on LNG. I just met with the Lithuanians. They're saying we were buying your gas. Now we're going to have to buy Russian gas. You're going to see the Middle East where ISIS was largely defeated. Iran was broke. Their field general Soleimani was taken off the battlefield. And we had peace accords literally being signed on the White House lawn between Israel and its Arab neighbors that were worthy of a Nobel Peace Prize under Donald Trump, and then the chaos that we're seeing now. He's going to draw that contrast. The facts are on his side, and you're going to see that crystal clear. And if he does it in the Donald Trump way, well, that's President Trump. But I got to tell you, the American people love his authenticity. They know he's not feeding them, a bunch of political nonsense. What you see is what you get.
Right. You talked about Kamala Harris flip-flopping. I mean, Donald Trump's done a few flip-flops himself, not least on abortion. He's got questions to answer as well.
Well, I mean, look, you've seen an evolution since the 90s. You saw Bill Clinton evolve on gay marriage. Of course, people evolve their positions, but I could lay out for you a dozen she's literally flip-flopped on just in the last year. That is distinctly different than someone that changes over decades, as Bill Clinton did, as President Trump has, and someone who is just speaking to the audience that they have in front of them and telling them what they want to hear. I think there's a distinct difference there that, again, the viewers are going to see.
Congressman, for years you and I spoke about the Biden policy and its withdrawal from Afghanistan. You talked about your dismay at the time, your disappointment and anger. Are you concerned that Donald Trump is going to turn his back on Ukraine?
Well, first, I just want to state the facts that Russia invaded a neighbor under President Bush, under President Obama, and under President Biden. He did not under President Trump. And, oh, by the way, when Obama refused to give lethal aid to Ukraine, President Trump did. He's the one that provided the Javelin missiles that they used in those early days. But I think you will see a difference that President Trump wants the war to end. He will drive both parties to the bargaining table in a way that only he can, rather than what is the policy now? What does success look like? Are we collectively going to kick every single Russian off of every inch of Ukrainian soil, including Crimea, for as long as it takes? So just saying a blank check isn't a policy, and I do think you'll see him actually lay out a policy to end the war.
Congressman, always good to talk to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. Thank you.
Well, it goes without saying that tonight is a marathon of sorts. We've still got about an hour and 45 minutes to go before the first debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, possibly the only debate. We'll be bringing you all the build-up, of course, with expert guests, two of whom are here in the studio. That's John Scardino, Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad UK, and also Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. Welcome both, and thank you for being with us. Greg, first of all, what do you think we can expect tonight?
Very difficult to predict because, as you know, President Trump is unpredictable. He's unfiltered. I hope he's, as Representative Waltz said, I hope he's disciplined. I hope he focuses on defining Kamala Harris because the press surely hasn't done that. And the press in America has been very supportive of her. And I think that it's up to him to define her because, and if she wants to define herself, all the better. I think she has a chance to appeal to moderates and independent voters or undecideds. She hasn't done that so far. She's energized her base for sure. So I think it's up to President Trump to define her and talk about her record and her policies, two things that we don't hear much about in the press.
But if she wants to define herself, she could define herself as younger, fresher, newer, different, and a changed candidate.
She might win on some of those things. She's definitely younger, and she's got a great appeal. I mean, she's got the great smile. She's done really well with the Hope and Joy campaign. But I think in terms of being new, she's the sitting vice president. So it's funny to talk about let's not go back, but she is the past 3.5 years. She ran for president in 2019 and 20 and failed. She never got over 2%. She didn't make it to Iowa. And then as vice president, she was kind of an underachiever. And I think even many Democrats would admit that. And in terms of the change candidate, yes, Mark was right earlier. 61% of Americans want major change. But Trump is up 12 points on that issue. Trump is too far right, is polling at 32%. Kamala is too far left, is at 44%. And in terms of the change candidate, 53% say Trump is the change
Is he
candidate.
the change candidate, though?
Well,
I mean,
compared to the last 3.5 years, yeah.
compared
he
to the
is.
last 3.5 years.
Absolutely.
But you know.
But
he
Kamala's at 25 on that metric. So, you know, Mark from Sky brought up a good point. You know, that yes, 61% want major change, not just change. 90% want change. But on that metric, Trump is leading pretty significantly. So if that ends up being a voting issue, I think he does well there.
Well, it's very interesting to hear from the point of view, because I think Kamala Harris has done a remarkable job, and I think the Biden administration has done a remarkable job. And I think what you'll see with Kamala Harris is a bit of an evolution and not anything revolutionary, but I think she'll build on the successes of the Biden administration, things like the incredible job creation. Biden brought the country back on its feet after a crisis with COVID that was terribly mishandled. So I think that there's an awful lot that she has to be proud of, and a lot that she will have to build on.
But that hasn't really landed, has it, with voters? When you look at the polls in terms of the economy, I mean, Trump will no doubt look at inflation rates as well. It hasn't landed in the way that the Biden administration has wanted, for example, job creations to be something that American people are focused on. They're looking at the now, and a lot of voters are saying, actually, our lives and livelihoods were better under the Trump presidency.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I do think that people associate themselves or find more appealing something visceral, and I think that Donald Trump is particularly good at finding what it is that's visceral about the performance in the economy or whatever issue it is that you'll see. One of the things that I expect to see from him tonight is, you know, he's been at this now for over 8 years. He's debated Hillary 3 times. He debated Joe Biden 3 times. He knows this arena. He is a trained TV personality. He had his own show. He is a bit of a showman. And that's where I find real fault with Donald Trump. He's fantastic entertainment, but he's lousy at governing. I mean, the administration that he had numerous opportunities to complete things for the American people. One of the biggest that your Republican guests will often hear me say is that he missed an opportunity to pass a bipartisan infrastructure bill. And when Biden got that done, it was an enormous stimulus on the economy, brought an enormous number of jobs, but it also addressed a lot of the longstanding problems that the country had with crumbling bridges and roads that were interfering with getting products to markets and things like that. So that's the kind of, Greg mentioned the erratic behavior of Donald Trump. That's the problem with him as a president, as somebody in government. He's fine on an entertainment stage, and he comes across very strong. But as somebody that needs to be thoughtful and forward-looking, I don't think this is the guy.
I guess, you know, what we will probably have to wait and see is, will people watch the full 90 minutes, or are people going to look out for those moments, which is what Donald Trump, as you say, is really good, those sort of viral moments. And you remember during the Joe Biden debate where Joe Biden said something and Donald Trump reacted and said, I don't know if he knows what he's talking about. I don't know, and I don't think he knows. It was that moment, I think, that became almost decisive in that sort of debate. But we will be continuing to discuss all of this and more. Of course, this is currently one of the closest general elections ever in the US. The polls show the candidates are neck and neck, and the unique political system means the winner is decided by just a few states. On election night, we will have our man with the numbers, Lewis Goodall, with a magic screen, which will bring us every twist and turn, every single result. Here he is with his take on how the US Electoral College system works.
There are over 200 million voters in the United States, but 200 million, as impressive as it sounds, is not the number that matters. The number that matters is 270. 270 Electoral College votes, and you win the presidency. That is why you can see this map of the United States. Every state in the Union has an Electoral College vote number, from 54 in California, because it's got the biggest population, right through to the smaller states with relatively few people there, and they only have 3 or 4 and so on. Every single state of the Union votes, and if you win that state, then you get its Electoral College votes, and then hopefully you get past the winning line to 270. You might be thinking, why have we coloured them in already? Has the election already happened yet? No, we just know that most presidential elections, most of the states, are already a bit of a foregone conclusion. They are safe. American presidential elections, particularly one as tightly as contested as this, pivot on these swing states. They're the ones you can see in grey here. We haven't coloured in, surrounded in yellow. There are 7 of them, and they are all absolutely crucial. For Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, basically they need to win at least 3 of them in order to be guaranteed the presidency. What might that arithmetic look like? Well, let's imagine for the sake of argument that Donald Trump is able to win the states back that on paper should be easiest for him to win back. The states that Joe Biden won in 2020 by the narrowest of margins. So that's places like Georgia, which no Democrat had won for many years, or Arizona and so on. Let's imagine he can win back, say, Nevada, which the Democrats have had for longer, and he had North Carolina back in 2020. And therefore, you can see that this election will likely pivot, possibly anyway, to these Rust Belt states, these 3 crucial states that had voted Democratic basically for every election for a generation until Donald Trump won them in 2016 and Biden wins them back in 2020. So if we just colour those in, and let's say Harris, who's polling well in Wisconsin and in Michigan, you can see there both would be on 268 for Trump, 251 for Harris. So you can see that the pivotal state in this election, what people are calling and describing as the tipping point state, is Pennsylvania. That likely neither candidate, either Trump or Harris, can win without it. So we've given it to Trump there. You can see he wins quite handily. We give it to Harris there, and she wins by a whisker. Pennsylvania is likely to be the key state, the keystone state, as it is called, in this election. We can even, if we focus in a little bit closer, we can see how narrow that could be in terms of, we see there are lots of there may be swing states, and it comes down to that, but it is even narrower than that in the sense that we can focus on the particular places that both campaigns will be fighting over. Places like Erie County in northwestern Pennsylvania, you can see Biden won that by a margin of only 1,400 back in 2020. Trump won it by a margin of about 2,000 in 2016. It's not just about the states, it's about the counties, the smaller places within those states. You rack up enough winning margins in these places that, frankly, many people outside of the United States, even in the United States, may never have heard of. This is how you win a presidential election in the United States of America.
Lewis Goodall there with how it all works and how close it could be. Let's get some analysis now on what could happen tonight and how Trump and Harris could try to attack each other. Joining me now is Amanda Mackey, a Republican strategist who joins us from Tampa in Florida. Good to talk to you again. I just wonder how key in this quite extraordinary campaign you think the debate could be.
I think it's a job interview for Kamala Harris. She hasn't done really any interviews. I mean, she's done one with CNN, but she had her vice presidential candidate next to her. So a lot of people thought that was a little bit strange. Whereas you compare that to former President Trump and J.D. Vance, who have done about 50 interviews. So I think this is really a job interview for her. This is an opportunity for her to clarify a lot of her positions, which require a lot of clarification. Certainly, I think people know Trump, whether they like him, they hate him, don't have a feeling towards him. They don't have that same position towards Kamala Harris. They don't know her. They don't know her positions. And so I think this is really an opportunity for her to prove who she is.
Right. Let's talk about Trump as well. How do you think he will play this?
I think he should tie her, obviously, to all the policies of this administration. She is part of this administration. She's second in line. I think he needs to do that without being, a bully, without coming off. And it's hard to do because he's a man, she's a woman. And sometimes the optics of that are hard to see when someone can be, aggressive. A lot of times that turns people off, especially if the male's doing that towards the female. And I think she has the opportunity to be aggressive and, kind of watch and see what he does. But he should be in the moment the way he was with Joe Biden. Let her do the talking. Let her be the one to show herself who she is, and don't take the bait. Don't get aggressive with her.
Right. And just finally, it's interesting, isn't it, that here we have a man who has a history of, we can say, misogyny, and here he is debating his second female nominee, Hillary Clinton first, of course, in 2016. It'd be very interesting to see how he deals with Kamala Harris.
I think a a lot has changed since 2016 when he debated Hillary Clinton. And, certainly he was president. And so even when you think back to what happened this summer with the assassination attempt and those things, I mean, these are life-altering events and they do change people. So anyway, it's interesting to see what it will be like tonight. But I think the most important thing is that Trump, people know who he is. Kamala Harris, people don't know who she is. He's leading her by 1 point in the latest poll by the New York Times. I think that means that he actually leads by much more. So he needs to be very organized and very disciplined tonight.
All right, Amanda, appreciate your time. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Well, the Vice President and presidential hopeful Kamala Harris is from California, a safe Democrat state which holds 54 Electoral College votes, so a big chunk of the prize. Well, let's go straight to our Martha Kellner, who's there for us. And Martha, I mean, as we said, a safe state. Interestingly, we thought at this time we'd probably be in Delaware, but it has shifted, hasn't it? You're now in California. You're at a watch party.
Yeah, I'm at a place called The Chapel. It's an ex-chapel converted into a live music and event space. They're just getting ready here for a watch party for this debate. But this is Kamala Harris's, hometown. She's from the San Francisco Bay Area. These are not the people that she has to worry about convincing. These are committed Democratic Party voters. It's voters in those 7 key swing states that you've been talking about that she needs to convince tonight. Many of those still undecided, still yet to make their minds up which way they're going to vote in November, or even when the early voting begins in just a few days' time. Those are the people that she has to convince about who she is, what sort of a president she will be. And that's why I think it's important this evening that she injects personality as well as policy into this debate. Interesting, too, that she's been having conversations over the past few days with Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, of course, debated Donald Trump 3 times in the 2016 election campaign. Ultimately, she was beaten by Donald Trump, but Hillary Clinton claims that she won all 3 of those debates. And so she thinks she has some advice to offer Harris on how to tackle Donald Trump. Listen to what Hillary Clinton told the New York Times about her discussions about the strategy that Harris should employ to face Trump. She said she should not be baited. She should bait him. He can be rattled. He doesn't know how to respond to substantive, direct attacks. And that tallies with what Harris's own team have been telling her about trying to goad Donald Trump into some of these long, rambling, incoherent rants that we sometimes see him engaging in. So that's what they want to see her do. They want her to try and draw Donald Trump into some of those traps that he's perhaps likely to fall into.
Yeah, and Kamala Harris has been locked away, hasn't she? Really prepping and planning and strategizing on how to deal with this. Martha, I wonder, we were together in the US when Joe Biden stepped down and, endorsed Kamala Harris. And we saw this mobilization of female volunteers moving towards Kamala Harris and that sort of support base. Are, some of the issues around women, reproductive rights, for example, coming to the forefront? And is it likely to be a big talking point in this debate this evening?
Yeah, I'd be amazed, Yalda, if there's not a question on abortion. I think it certainly will come up, the issue of reproductive rights, and it's somewhere where Kamala Harris can really score points on Donald Trump. It's one of his biggest political vulnerabilities, and reproductive rights is the most important issue to women under the age of 45. And even when you take the electorate as a whole, it's among the most important issues, perhaps beaten only by the economy, rising prices and inflation. So abortion will come up, and it's something that Kamala Harris can really pin Donald Trump to the wall on.
OK, Martha, well, we look forward to talking to you a little later. Thanks so much for now.
Right, time for a quick break now. Next on this Sky News special programme, we'll hear from... What a lovely shot that is. Is that light? It is Philadelphia as the sun goes down. We'll hear from Democratic strategist Hillary Rosen as we count down to the first live debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Welcome back. And tonight is one of the most anticipated debates in US election history. How will Donald Trump perform tonight when his opponent is again a woman? But we also don't know what to expect, of course, from Kamala Harris, who is relatively new to this campaigning.
Well, let's get the opinion from Democratic strategist Hillary Rosen now. Hillary, really good to see you. I'm actually going to ask our team to show those live images coming out of Philadelphia at the moment. Philadelphia, obviously, Pennsylvania, really quite a significant state. It's a swing state. And that's also where the Declaration of Independence was adopted, wasn't it, in 1776? So on so many levels, so significant. But let's talk about the polls, Hillary. It does appear at this stage that things are neck and neck.
Neck and neck. Well, first, hi. Debate day for me is always like, for any pundit, I think, 10 hours of ourselves boring blather and then 90 minutes of sheer panic. And so, we're bordering on the sheer panic time coming soon. Look, the stakes tonight are really high. And I think they wouldn't have been as high if we didn't have such a dramatic result from the last debate. 50 million people watched that debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And I heard you say earlier, within the first 10 minutes, Joe Biden's presidency was over. And that's a dramatic outcome for a debate, one you don't usually see. We saw, as Amanda said, Hillary Clinton won debates in 2016, and yet Donald Trump won the presidency. So normally a debate wouldn't have such high stakes. But given the compressed time that Kamala Harris has to get the country comfortable with her as commander-in-chief, as president, this is a really big moment for her.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary, the fact is a high percentage of Americans are saying they're not quite sure who Kamala Harris is.
They are. And it's interesting. My personal view is Donald Trump is not going to lose a single vote between now and Election Day. His voters are secure. They're steadfast. There's about, 3% undecided right now, maybe 5% if you add in some of the voters for third-party candidates who sometimes shift and go to one of the major candidates. So that 3% or 4% of the electorate is really the target for Kamala Harris. And those are the people who are saying, I need to know more. The polls are really tight. What is it that this person stands for beyond the Biden presidency?
Right, and Hillary, Kamala Harris is largely untested, certainly at the top. I mean, I saw her described earlier today as an emergency nominee.
Well, I don't think she's untested. I give her a lot of credit. Look, she was a statewide attorney general under a lot of pressure with major cases in California. She was a United States senator for years. She's been a vice president for several years. So she has a record and a history. She has much more qualifications than Donald Trump did when he first ran for president. So I don't think that's a fair charge. I think what she is people aren't sure what's different about her from Joe Biden. And so that gets to kind of the things that she needs to do tonight and the things that she doesn't need to do tonight.
So how does she do that then? Because Donald Trump is certain to, tie her very closely to Joe Biden. How does she break away from that while at the same time owning the kind of good stuff she wants to talk about?
I think she needs to do two things. She needs to be very aggressive about putting her own agenda out there, sounding reasonable on the economy, understanding that the economy is still not perfect for many people, but she is on the side of middle-class voters. She needs to hang abortion around his neck. Amanda just said that in the last segment. This is a really important issue, and he has been trying to get away from it for the last 3 weeks. She needs to put his back on him and make it clear where he's responsible for millions of American women losing their rights. And the two things she doesn't need to do are defend Joe Biden. She can't do that. She can't spend her time defending the Biden presidency, defending his decisions, defending, the mess ups in Afghanistan. She has to let go of that and not worry about the president's feelings. And the second thing is, I think, what Hillary Clinton's advice was. She can't take the bait every time. She has to pick her battles with him. So that means not responding to every little nasty aside he gives, but picking the big one that will end up rattling him.
Yeah, because that is what he's going to try and do. While she's going to try and reintroduce herself to the American people, he's going to try and shape the perception around her so that she is left defending the Biden administration rather than introducing her own policies and strategy.
Right, and that's a trap she just can't fall into. And I'm, hoping and praying that she doesn't. I've talked to some of her team. I think that she understands that. She is very personally respectful of Joe Biden, and so it will not be easy, but she is committed to making sure that people know who she is. And look, Joe Biden's got his big boy pants on today. He knows that he's going to take some shots, and he's not going to worry about that.
Hillary, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, take care.
Right, let's come back to the panel now. John Scardino, Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad UK, and Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. John, I'm just interested in picking up on this whole issue of the economy and how Kamala Harris is going to deal with the attack that is inevitably coming.
I think she's been out unveiling some of her proposals. I think some of the specific things that she said that I've caught my attention. She wants to be helpful to small businesses. Right now, if you're starting a new business, you can deduct $5,000 off of your startup expenses. She wants to raise that to $50,000. So that's a good example of what she wants to do to help create what she's called the opportunity economy. Not everybody had the kind of opportunity that Donald Trump had when he came into business and he was handed several million, $400 million or more dollars by his father to start into business. That's quite a nice stepping stone to get a business started. So she wants to be helpful to small businesses because they are, in many ways, the backbone of the U.S. economy. So creating jobs through that and encouraging entrepreneurship, I think, is one way to do that.
But what I don't understand is, I mean, on growth and jobs creation, they've had a pretty good run. The problem is the cost of living and inflation and interest rates are the things that really do impact on ordinary people in the United States.
Yes, and I think she described some of her proposals, again, to address some of those specific issues, one of which is looking at where there's been price gouging. There are some tools in her arsenal to address some things to get that many states are already doing. There are 37 states that have rules about preventing grocers and other retailers from jacking up prices in times of disaster. If a hurricane hits, you can't just go out there and start raising the price of your basic needs. So she's looking at ways like that to try to control prices, put some guardrails on them in a legitimate way, but also to try and inject more competition in those industries so that one of the things that happened over the last couple of years, obviously, that we're all familiar with, was the interruption in the supply chain. So the idea of creating more businesses, as we were talking about earlier, and providing more opportunity for competition in those industries will also be helpful in driving prices down.
Yeah, because the economy, frankly, is on the top of the agenda for the American voters. And, when we look at the Biden administration's record when it comes to the economy, they have done well when it comes to job creations. But Donald Trump is going to want to focus on things like inflation.
Yeah, and this is why Trump is polling 12.5 points ahead of Kamala in most polls, or at least 12.5 points on the economy and inflation, because he can tie Kamala to inflation. Now, on one hand, she can say, that wasn't me, as Hillary was saying, that wasn't me, I was just the vice president. But she signed the two bills that caused the inflation, right? The two reckless spending bills, I would argue, the American Rescue Plan and the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which is an amusing name. Biden finally came clean last week and said it wasn't an Inflation Reduction Act. It was basically a Green New Deal or a mini Green New Deal. But these are important metrics for Trump to highlight. I'm not sure how Vice President Harris can defend herself on it. But what you had was, yes, there was job creation. There was a lot of backfill from the COVID lockdowns. But remember, this argument about, they took over this horrible economy. No. Third quarter of 2020, 35% growth. Fourth quarter, 4.2% growth. First quarter of 21, 5.2% growth. Those are huge numbers. And granted, they were rebound numbers, but all of the GDP that was lost during the COVID lockdown in 2020 was recovered by the first quarter of 21. To drop $4 trillion in reckless spending to create inflation while also having the hostility to the supply side, bad formula. That's why we had 9.5% inflation.
What we're looking at is the spin room. I mean, things are so enormous in America. There's a lot of spinning.
Hell of a spin room.
There's a lot of room for a lot of spinning in that room. But I just want to make the point, actually, because it's almost, John, that Trump can bring out this, were you better off, 4 years ago, and what was it, the Reagan line, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, he could almost give that a run again.
Yeah.
Well, he may do, but I would say when people look at the things that the Biden economy has created, yes, we've talked a lot about the job creation. Inflation has come way back down to below what it was before Trump came into office.
Not true.
When Trump came in 2016, he took over an economy that was on the way up and was doing well. So to make it sound like he created this out of whole cloth, I think is very.
But it is a difficult balancing act, isn't it, for Kamala Harris to kind of distance herself from certain perceptions around the Biden administration and come across as someone who is, the change maker, the new fresh blood in all of this, when Trump is going to try and drag her into how the Biden administration has been perceived on this.
I do think that she's got quite a lot to offer here. So I know that Greg is dying to get in. I think we have a disagreement about inflation.
Price controls have worked really well in the past in Venezuela, Soviet Union. I mean, I don't think that's something that she can run with. She's got to be careful about that. And I would, when she announced that a few weeks ago, it was the first time she'd announced a policy.
Does she really mean price?
Even the Washington Post.
In the sense that
I think we talked a little bit about that. The things that she's proposing are things that states are already using. More than 37 states are using these kind of controls that say you can't abuse the consumer in a time of crisis when the supply chain has been upset or that kind of thing. So they're very modest proposals.
Yeah, I mean, grocery stores have 2% margins right now, so I don't know where she's going to find, this price controls or, executing those practically. But I think that the point is, granted, Trump was polling, up significantly more over Biden than he is on Vice President Harris, but he's still leading by 10 plus points on the economy, 10 plus points on the border. Those are the things that he should highlight tonight. And I think on the economy, it's a tough argument for Vice President Harris. If I were her, I would avoid it and kind of sidestep it.
It's going to be hard to avoid it, I think.
Yeah. It's the number one issue for Americans, so it will be difficult.
I do think that this idea that Trump has of a sort of his cartoon version of the economy by slapping 10% controls on tariffs
that's a mistake.
On income.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the way to go, and I think it would have exactly the opposite effect. It would hurt consumers and job creation.
Yes.
Agreement. We don't want too much.
No, we don't.
We've got a long night.
Yeah.
We'll find another one.
Well, our US correspondent James Matthews is in the spin room for us, where many Republicans and Democrats will be watching the debate. James, thanks so much for joining us. It's all gearing up there, isn't it? And we're having a conversation here about the kind of strategy that both parties are likely to adopt in this particular debate, and really how difficult it is going to be for Kamala Harris to, on the one hand, not find herself defending the Biden administration's record, because frankly, she was part of that. And then on the other hand, trying to sell herself as this new fresh blood in all of this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, presenting herself as the change candidate when Trump will say to her tonight, they've certainly been trailing this attack line long enough, that she owns everything that's come out of the White House for the past 4 years and all the unpopular stuff on the economy, immigration, how much higher prices are and how much worse off Americans feel. Trump will be pointing the finger at Harris for that tonight. So she needs to seize the strength of the incumbency, yes, but also put daylight between her and Joe Biden. She's been doing that over recent weeks, and I suppose tonight we'll see her build on that. She certainly needs to present herself as the woman who could be president, needs to emerge from underneath Joe Biden's shadow effectively on these key important issues, all the while Donald Trump highlighting the failings of things like immigration, in which she had a key role. I'm struck, Yalda, tonight, standing here in the spin room where the spinners will be coming and going, quite serious names, serious players. J.D. Vance is expected here, possibly RFK Jr. For the Democrats, they've wheeled in the likes of Anthony Scaramucci. The Mooch, used to be Trump's former director of communications. He's telling everyone who will listen that Donald Trump failed in the White House once. He will fail again. So that's all going to happen here prior to the debate, spinning what's going to happen, and then afterwards, obviously, spinning their view of what has happened. The key will be, in the eyes of the viewer, to emerge as presidential, to carry authority on stage and gravitas. I think in here there is an expectation that contrasts with Atlanta, where Biden and Trump debated. I remember in the build-up to that, just talking to the media, there was kind of limited expectations about how that night would go. I think everybody saw the power of the presidential debate that night, and to that extent, there is, I think, a raised anticipation, expectation of impact on the election campaign tonight.
James, we can't talk to you tonight without mentioning that it is a significant birthday for you. Shall I say what it is? It's 60th, still much younger than me. And we thought that a little birthday gift we should celebrate by showing you in action over the last 2 years.
Mr. Trump, James Matthews from Sky News. Vladimir Putin calls you outstanding, Mr. Musk. What would you call Vladimir Putin? You have form in terms of breaking the law on COVID. Have you broken it again?
No, you just...
You said you've been... You said, does your government owe an apology to the British home children? Great to see you, sir. Does your government owe them an apology? Do you fear a fourth indictment? Is it a draw? Is New Hampshire make or break for you? Is this make or break for you? Does that indicate a military weakness on the part of Iran? No.
I really don't care what David Cameron has to say, and frankly, he can kiss my ass.
Good to see you. Why should the public believe anything you say?
Thank you. It's okay, he's from Sky News. He's entitled to ask me questions.
So happy birthday to our doorstepper in chief. You make people's lives a misery, James, but happy birthday, and there we are.
Stay tuned. That's not going to change.
That's not going to change.
No. Actually, James, when I was at the Republican National Convention, gave me some tips on how best to doorstep. Use their first names, go in there, look them straight in the eye, like you know them. So the king of doorsteps.
But as a serious point, James, I mean, you'll be doing some serious doorstepping after the debate, and you saying earlier that the level of people who are going to turn out, that gives an idea of how seriously they're taking this debate.
I mean, this is pivotal, Mark, isn't it, in terms of what could happen? Big stakes for both individuals, particularly for Kamala Harris, I would suggest. Polls indicate Americans don't know enough about her. Trump is entering his 7th presidential debate. He can work the TV stage extremely well. The challenge for Harris is to present herself to the American public and to present her politics.
All right, James, happy birthday, and we'll talk to you a little later.
Cheers.
Well, Mark, we're expecting this debate to begin in about an hour's time. Let's just show you the spin room right now. A lot of the conversation debate will be coming out of this particular space. I mean, I often describe it as the greatest show on earth, and we will be continuing all of our coverage in the next few minutes.
Welcome back then to tonight's special Sky News programme. Tonight, the two candidates fighting to make it into the White House will go head-to-head for the first time in what could be the crucial moment of the US election campaign.
The former President Donald Trump and the current Vice President Kamala Harris, that's a choice confronting the American people when they go to the polls on the 5th of November.
And in just under 1 hour's time now, the pair will debate live on American TV from Philadelphia. Who will come out on top, we cannot predict, but what we do know is that it could be pivotal in the campaign and therefore could have ripple effects around the world.
Tonight on this Sky News special programme, we'll bring you the debate live from Philadelphia.
And we'll have expert analysis and reaction from our studio guests, the Vice Chair of the Democrats Abroad UK, John Scardino, and the Chair of the Republicans Overseas UK, Greg Swenson. We'll get reaction, of course, from the Trump and Harris camps in the US.
But of course, it's the swing states that matter in this election, and the polls are telling us it's neck and neck. We'll get analysis from our man with the numbers, Lewis Goodall, at our Sky News election screen. Welcome back to this special Sky News programme for the US presidential debate with me, Yalda, Hakim and Mark Austin.
Well, it's been a campaign like no other, but this could tonight be the moment when one candidate makes a decisive break.
I'm calling on Crooked Joe to debate anytime, any place. We'll do it anywhere you want, Joe.
I'm not going anywhere. All right.
Breaking news coming into us from the United States, and President Joe Biden says he is stepping down from the US presidential election campaign.
For 50 years, like many of you, I've given my heart and soul to our nation.
She is, as you know, the most radical left person. People don't know the real Kamala.
In many ways, Donald Trump is an unserious man.
Did you see her on television last night? This is going to be the president. This is going to be the president of our country. I don't think so.
America, we are not going back. We are not going back.
In a week from now, week and a half. I look forward to that debate very much.
There we are. Well, the battle lines have been properly drawn. It's less than an hour to go now until that debate in Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. And our US correspondent Mark Stone is right there now. And Mark, not long to go then until a big moment in this campaign.
Yeah, a pivotal moment. A gauntlet will be run tonight in the road to the White House. Let me paint a picture, well, show you the picture of where we are. This is what they call the spin room. It's the size of 2 football fields, and it's absolutely packed tonight with journalists from all around the world. Not just journalists, but surrogates too, allies of both candidates who will come here, who are here now, who will be here after the debate. You can tell when they're here because there are huddles as people gather around those surrogates and listen to them as they try to tell us who they think is going to win or who has won. I think that's Senator Chris Murphy there, a Democratic senator from the northeast of the country, who will no doubt be telling people why he thinks this will be Kamala Harris's night, and telling people what he thinks she needs to do. We're not actually in the spot where the debate is taking place. This is the Philadelphia Convention Center. Incidentally, this is the location where the votes get counted in the presidential election, the votes from this part of Pennsylvania. And it is also the place where 4 years ago, Donald Trump's surrogates turned up to allege a mass fraud. They alleged back then that the election had been stolen. There was no evidence for that. The courts proved that wasn't the case. But it was a hive of activity back then, these claims of a stolen election. It is a hive of activity again with the same character, at least one of the same characters, front and center. Donald Trump still here, wanting to return to the White House. The venue itself where the debate is taking place, as we look at this massive hall here, is a couple of blocks away at the spot, in fact, where the US Constitution was first signed 237 years ago. So a spot of history will be made tonight, perhaps, on the same point where history was made, where this nation was founded 237 years ago. It's one heck of a night as both candidates try to present to the people across America and beyond why they should lead the country for the next 4 years.
Yeah, and Mark, it wasn't long ago we were in Chicago and the Democratic convention, and that was pretty easy for Kamala Harris. She was cheered to the rafters, huge support for her, and she left with, a boost in the polls and so forth. That seems to have disappeared. Is it fair to say that this is the first real test for Kamala Harris?
Yes. I think it's the case that people expected that convention speech would be a speech that was the first test, because they had expected that perhaps she would give more away in terms of her policies. She really didn't. And although I think that some seemed quite giddy about her performance there, I think the reality is that she passed the test. She did what those who were already relatively convinced by her performance, she did what they needed to hear. But there are still many people across the country who feel, despite the fact that she is the sitting vice president, they don't really know what she stands for. They don't really understand how she can present change when she is the continuity candidate, when she is aligned to everything that President Biden stands for. So I think that will be a challenge for her tonight, to present herself not as the continuity, but as the change, but also to continue the positives that she would see in the legacy of the Biden administration. So policy is going to be absolutely key tonight. The other question, though, Mark, is which Donald Trump shows up tonight? Is it the combative character that we have all got so used to over the course of, many years now? Or is it a more reserved Donald Trump? Maybe the sort of guy that we saw in that debate a few weeks ago, which was so disastrous for Joe Biden. Remember, Donald Trump really didn't have to goad Joe Biden at all. Joe Biden destroyed himself in that disastrous performance. If he comes to this debate tonight in an hour's time with that same persona, not the combative Donald Trump that we're used to, then maybe that will be a struggle for Kamala Harris. What I think he will need to do is build on what he's already been doing to portray her as far left. It is true that over her journey as a politician, she has certainly become more centrist from a really very far left agenda not all that long ago. So I think he will seize on that.
OK, Mark, we'll talk to you a little later. Thanks very much indeed.
Well, let's go to another part of the spin room now, where we can speak to our James Matthews. And James, you were just talking there to Mark, who's obviously under the same roof as you, but it's so massive, you're just on the other side, about the fact that the Democratic National Convention really was an easy ride for Kamala Harris. She, alongside presenting herself as the change candidate, she's also going to want to try and portray herself as some kind of underdog, just to capture and continue to capture America's attention.
Yeah, and that's very much the Democrat strategy, to portray her as the underdog, to gain traction in the key areas geographically where they need it. This is one of them, Pennsylvania. And when you look at the polls, yes, Kamala Harris has done consistently well since her selection. The difficulty she has right now is that the polls are sticking. Donald Trump has this MAGA base on which he can rely, and the polls they're neck and neck within the margin of error. Pennsylvania is an issue. 19 electoral votes will be delivered by the state, and according to which poll you look at, it's either Trump or Harris ahead. So it's tight. Harris, yes, has done well in front of a home crowd. She's not really been tested at all. There is this astonishing situation where the woman who wants to be President of the United States has been interviewed once in 6 weeks by an independent interviewer, CNN. It was a joint interview with her running mate, Tim Waltz. He was there as a kind of staged prompt. And yes, she was asked the important questions, but I would say without the follow-ups that were necessary to drill down, to interrogate who she is and what are her politics. I think she's going to be confronted with that big style on stage tonight, as far as will be possible. I mean, it is this artificial environment where they get 2 minutes, then the mic gets cut off, 2 minutes rebuttal, and then limited follow-up after that. So, you know, it's not really a forum over the 90 minutes in which either candidate can develop policy, flesh out a programme for government. It is more of an interrupted monologue on the part of both, you know, largely or certainly heavy on political pantomime. They will both come with political stand-up routines, playing it for moments, the kind of moments that will live on in social media for the millions who consume their news on a vertical screen and won't necessarily be sitting through the 90 minutes of debate.
Yeah, and that's the point as well, isn't it, James? That it was those moments that Donald Trump captured last time where he was able to portray Joe Biden as, frankly, a mess. And, you know, he captured, and he's very good at capturing those moments. So it will be about whether Kamala Harris can, you know, have her own moments that live on beyond the 90-minute debate.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to that extent, Team Harris are keen on getting under Donald Trump's skin. That's what they have made known in the run-up to this debate. They see him as an individual who's shown consistently that he becomes visibly agitated, can lose the rag, can be ill-tempered. We saw it in his first debate with Joe Biden in 2020, where he was clearly frustrated and angry, interrupted Biden consistently and gave Biden that golden moment, that moment where he said to him, "Will you shut up, man?" That was the viral moment that night. And Trump admits that he lost on the night. Certainly the polls dipped for him after that. He learned his lesson. He has been more statesmanlike and square-jawed. We've seen that in the debate since. Tonight he goes into his 7th presidential debate compared to Kamala Harris's first. So we'll see how he behaves and where the subject matter and the theatre of it all takes him. He's certainly been advised by his aides to focus on policy, not to get personal. Don't forget, we're looking at candidates, male-female candidate. Remember the Hillary Clinton debate in 2016, the spectacle of Donald Trump standing over her, stalking her on stage. Clinton's been speaking to Kamala Harris about being on the same stage with Donald Trump, and I do wonder about the stage dynamics and the gender element in all of this. Will Donald Trump, a man who's insulted women consistently, Harris among them, you know, will he try to, or will he introduce an element of gender politics that the viewers at large will find offensive, insulting? How will female viewers regard tonight's spectacle, regard his behaviour, not forgetting that female voters is the demographic that he badly needs to retain or indeed to regain, because they have deserted him in large numbers, and Harris will be looking to corral them behind her in particular.
James, thank you so much for now.
Well, Kamala Harris is from California, and it may be all but a done deal there. But the battleground states are where the election is won or lost. Using Sky's special US election touchscreen, Lewis Goodall takes us through the key swing states which could decide this election.
There are 7 key states where this election is going to be decided. What does the latest data tell us about how each candidate is doing in each of these 7 states? Well, you can see here, full 7 swing states here: Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, North Carolina, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, all in very different parts of the United States. And in each of them, if you're in the Harris campaign, you're looking at that. This is their polling lead average in each of these states. You're looking at that and thinking, well, that ain't bad. We are in front. Wisconsin, we're in front quite a lot. But look at the margins in all of these other states. Arizona, 0.3%. Georgia, 0.5%, both states that Biden won back in 2020. North Carolina, Trump won it in 2020, but ahead only by 0.3%. And even in Michigan, Nevada, and the key state, we'll talk about it more in a minute, of Pennsylvania, all states won by Joe Biden back in 2020. We are talking about a really small poll lead. And bear in mind as well, all of these polls come with a caveat, the margin of error, i.e. they may be out by between 2 and 3%. So when you put that in mind and all of the other frailties we know about state polling, then we can see what this race really is a dead heat. If you're in a Harris campaign, you're not looking at that and thinking we are home and dry by any stretch of the imagination at all. So how does that translate into the actual electoral map? We know 270 Electoral College votes you need to win. Let's have a look at these grey states here. Those are exactly the states that we were just talking about, the key swing states. And basically, we need to fill in that map in order to see who might get to 270. So let's, for the sake of argument, say that some of those states that Biden won in 2020 for the first time, like Georgia and Arizona, that Trump might be able to win those back. And let's say, for the sake of argument as well, he wins Nevada and he wins North Carolina as well, which he won back in 2020. And that Harris wins Wisconsin, where she's far ahead, and she manages to hang on in Michigan as well. Those two states tend to vote together. We can see where we end up. And basically, this presidential election ends up in the northeastern state of Pennsylvania with its 19 Electoral College votes, because both candidates need it to win. If we give it to Kamala Harris, then she's on 270. If we give it to Donald Trump, he's on 287. For Kamala Harris in particular, it is really hard to make the electoral map add up without Pennsylvania. If we give that to Donald Trump and see what would Harris have to do then? Well, she'd have to really sweep the board in the other states. So she'd have to win in Nevada, and she'd have to win in Arizona, and then she would have to win in either Georgia, which Biden only won by an absolute hair's breadth back in 2020, in which Democrats don't normally win in these days, or in North Carolina. So she would have to sweep the board in the other swing states if she loses in Pennsylvania. That is why both Democratic and Republican strategists all think that the road to this election, it's not just a 270, but it is through the northeastern state of Pennsylvania.
Well, that's how close it is, and that's why this debate is so important. Not long to go now until the first presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It's the candidates' chance to get their plans across to voters, and one man who will know a thing or two about Mr. Trump's policies, certainly, is Joe Grogan, the former head of the White House Domestic Policy Council. Thank you very much for being with us, and not long to go now. How do you think Donald Trump is going to go about things?
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate being on. He's done, as one of your previous reporters said, he's done a lot of these debates. Remember, he came through the 2016 primary election with all these Republican candidates that he demolished repeatedly in debates. He's done. He did a great job against Hillary Clinton, and he debated Joe Biden as well. And then, unprecedented in American history, he just blew Biden out of the campaign. And the Democrats have come in and replaced him with Harris. So Trump is very accomplished and had a good record. He hasn't always been perfect, but he's learned, and he's been on TV a lot. He's a showman. So I think he's going to be pretty disciplined. He's got a good team around him that has prepared him well. So I think it's set up for him to do a solid performance tonight. Granted, there are plenty of risks for him, but he's much more experienced in this venue than Kamala Harris.
You say he's going to be pretty disciplined. He does tend to find that difficult. I mean, do you think, his advisors, if you believe what you read in the American media, his advisors want him to stick to policy. Do you think he's really able to do that?
Sure. Yeah, I think so. I think that's Kamala's big weakness is policy. She's flip-flopped on so many different issues. She hasn't been exposed to the voters. She hasn't done many interviews. As one of your reporters mentioned, she's been sheltered sort of bizarrely by her team from the public, from reporters. So it's very difficult to respond to these questions in an authentic way in a venue with the white lights on you. So I think she's got a big challenge. It's more high stakes for her. It looks like she's plateaued in the polls. And if she has a bad night, she potentially could collapse. If she has a good night, Trump, I think because the voters have been so exposed to him over time, he's not going to collapse, and he can still make up ground in the weeks before Election Day. But it's very high stakes for her, and I would imagine she's a little nervous.
Joe, do you think it's high stakes for him? Because his sort of chief political skill is attacking. And while you say that he has become more disciplined, do you think he'll be tempted in this debate?
Well, I don't know that I said he was more disciplined. He certainly has had a couple debates where he hasn't done great. In the 2020 election, he definitely had a subpar performance. But overall, I don't know that you've seen a lot of better debaters. I mean, had he not done well in 2016 in the Republican primary and demolished the field, he wouldn't have risen to the top had he been a mediocre debater. I mean, he rose to the top on his debate performances. And nobody in American history has blown somebody out of a campaign from a debate performance like he just did to Joe Biden. So I think if he doesn't lose it, if he sticks to the policy, he's going to do great. And that's her big weakness, are the policies of high inflation, out of control border, and national security disasters. And she's going to have a tough time explaining that. Not to mention, she's been all over the map, a whole host of issues from tax policy to criminal justice. It's a difficult position for her to be in because she doesn't have a record here of, a consistent record, and she hasn't been exposed to the American people the way Donald Trump has been.
Yeah, certainly her advisors are telling her not to chase every attack if he does go on the attack, which we are expecting him to do so. But Joe, I just want to show our viewers these live images that are coming in from just a few blocks away from the convention centre, where we're expecting the debate to take place this evening. We're seeing a group of pro-Palestinian protesters. They've gathered outside of Philadelphia's City Hall. And they, at present, we're being told there's police there at the moment, and everything does appear to be peaceful. We're also told that these demonstrators are holding signs reading "Abandon Harris," for example. I mean, this is a contentious issue, the war in the Middle East. I spoke to the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken today. This has become part of the Biden administration's legacy. But, do you expect these foreign policy issues to be discussed and debated this evening as well?
Well, I hope so. I think the American people deserve a discussion of foreign policy. The world was in a much better place when Donald Trump was in office. Russia invaded Ukraine under Biden's watch, Biden-Harris watch, and of course the Middle East erupted. And we are not in a safe, stable environment. A number of Americans from all walks of life are concerned about international affairs, and some of these foreign policies crises spiraling completely out of control. I mean, we're witnessing some real tragedies in the Middle East and in Europe, and a colossal loss of life. And how Kamala Harris explains to the American people how she's going to get the world out of this predicament and navigate it, I think the American people deserve to hear that.
Well, maybe we can pick up some of those thoughts with our guests in the studio here in just a moment. But Joe Grogan, appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
And time for a quick break. Next on this Sky News special programme, we'll hear from our expert panel here in the studio as we count down to the first live debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris.
I'm Martha Kellner, and I'm Sky's US correspondent based here in Los Angeles.
It's turning everybody into, a crazy, violent drug addict.
How are you feeling?
I am angry.
It is an anti-woman agenda.
2 women say that you paid for their abortions. Are you a hypocrite, sir? Will your candidates win?
I hope so. I think they will. I think they're great candidates.
I gotta be realistic. My sister's dead.
More than 4 weeks on, there's no murder weapon and no suspect. Are you going to catch this killer?
We are doing everything we can.
Ghislaine Maxwell has pleaded not guilty to all 6 charges against her. Mum, how are you feeling today?
Jeffrey said, you answer to Ghislaine, you just don't cross her.
We're so excited.
Severe nightmares of these people coming in and just taking me in the middle of the night.
I've watched as whole towns were torn apart by natural disaster.
I'm alive and I'm thankful for that, but there are a lot of people who aren't.
It's not the winds people fear most here, it's the water. We take you to the heart of the stories which shape our world. Do you truly believe what you're saying?
A lot of cases that I know are reported from Ukrainian missiles themselves.
Ambassador, with respect, I think that's preposterous.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers.
We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
Welcome back. Just over 30 minutes to go. Let's return to our guests in the studio. That's John Scardino, Vice Chair of the Democrats Abroad UK, and also Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. And Greg, we were just talking to Joe Grogan, and we were starting to talk to him about foreign policy and how that might feature tonight. If it does feature, are we going to see Donald Trump being challenged on Ukraine and how he is apparently going to do much less for Ukraine?
Yeah, well, he's definitely not, he hasn't been as vocal as Vice President Harris or Joe Biden about unquestioned support for Ukraine or, as Biden says, as much as they need. Although Biden and Kamala's policy has been pretty incoherent. There's no end game. They haven't been consistent. They didn't give F-16s at the beginning, and they changed on that later. They restricted the Ukrainians on what they could do with the weapons. So what's important is to look back at what Trump has done. And I think Congressman Waltz said this earlier. During the Biden and Obama years, they gave blankets and non-lethal weapons to Ukraine. They were afraid to offend Putin, so they shipped those blankets and helmets to an airbase, a U.S. airbase in Poland, and then trucked them in commercial trucks, not American flag trucks, to Kyiv. Now, that was possibly helpful. And then when Trump came in, it was Javelin missiles. And that was, lethal weapons, obviously. So, this is a difference between being, having deterrence or supporting and, ahead of the game. And so instead of waiting till there's a crisis. So Trump has done that very deliberately. I think he will again.
So will he continue to
I think he will. I think he will.
He doesn't give that impression.
I mean, he's basically said he can end this war in 24 hours. And we've heard the sort of things that J.D. Vance has said. The focus needs to shift towards Asia.
That's I think, a policy that many Americans believe in, including Democrats, that, that has to be, Obama called it the pivot to Asia. So,
and that was a mistake.
In retrospect, it was because he did it prematurely. He took his eye off the Middle East. He took his eye off Europe. Trump did not take his eye off the Middle East. Abraham Accords, peace and prosperity. He didn't take his eye off Ukraine. He was sending Javelin missiles and other lethal weapons there. So, what Trump says sometimes is different than what he does. And that's confusing, and I surely admit that. But I think what he's saying here is respect the American voter who's seen an open border and 10 million illegal migrants come in. At the same time, we're sending $60 billion to Ukraine. Yeah. So I think there has to be a little bit of balance there.
John, what do you think Donald Trump, if he wins, will do on Ukraine? I mean, as Yalda says, he says, I can sort it out in 24 hours. I mean, that is, exceedingly unlikely.
Yes, like he did with North Korea. He sorted that out in 24 hours.
What do you think?
That worked really well.
What do you think he will do?
Well, I'm not a foreign policy expert, and I should have said at the start that there's some restrictions on me because I'm a representative of the Democratic Party about what I can talk about foreign policy. What I do know is that the people who are experts in foreign policy, who have served with Donald Trump, have been running away from him very publicly in the last few days as fast as they possibly can. His former chief of staff, Mark Esper, the generals that have served under him have said not only is he not competent, but he is a danger to U.S. military interests into the security of America. So even his former vice president, Mike Pence, has said, I'm not supporting this guy, I'm not voting for this guy. So people that have a very close knowledge of Donald Trump have said he's unsuitable for the role of commander-in-chief, and I tend to believe them.
I guess when you think about the last few years, I mean, the Biden administration has presided over two wars, the Ukrainian war and the war that's flared up in the Middle East. When I spoke to Tony Blinken today, I mean, he couldn't quite give us any real clarity as to what the Biden administration's Iran policy is, for example. I mean, just imposing sanctions, for example, cannot be an overall strategy. We're dealing with Iran, who is sending ballistic missiles to the Russians and also sending missiles to the likes of Hamas and Hezbollah.
Trump's policy, as I recall, was just to say no and to bail out of anything that the previous president had done. And I think that was a big mistake. So he has got to come up with some more coherent policies. I hope that we'll see some of that tonight. Maybe we won't. He, as your previous guest said, he is very much of a showman. So it could be that the Trump that shows up tonight is going to be the one who glosses over some of these things that are very substantive and people want to hear about.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see how these policies evolve under both of these administrations, but also tonight in the debate.
Right, time for a quick break now. Next on this Sky News special programme, we will be live at a watch party in California, Kamala Harris's home state, as we get closer to that debate tonight. The pictures you're seeing there is the spin room in Philadelphia, a city that is set for a very big moment in this campaign.
Welcome back. The President and presidential hopeful Kamala Harris is from California, a safe Democrat state which holds 56 Electoral College votes, so a big chunk of the prize. Well, let's go straight to our Martha Kellner, who's there for us. And Martha, you're at what we describe as a watch party in San Francisco.
Yeah, I'm at a place called the Chapel, Yalda. It's an ex-chapel converted into a live music and event space. And in around 25 minutes' time, on the big screen behind me, the debate will begin between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. These are not the people that Kamala Harris has to worry about winning over. This is a heavily Democrat voting area. She will easily carry her home state of California. It's people watching in those crucial swing states, those 7 states that are so key to this election that she has to be concerned about. She needs to tell her story, inject a bit of her personality, and, of course, remind them of her policies, what sort of a president she will be. I'm just going to bring in here 2 ladies from San Francisco, Diane and Laura. Laura, how key is this debate tonight to Kamala Harris's chances of beating Donald Trump?
I think this is going to be an incredibly important night for her. I think there's a lot of expectations on her, and I think sometimes unreasonable expectations. I mean, we saw the consequences for President Biden for what happened, and I think, you know, there's a lot that people are expecting out of her, and yeah, I think it's very important tonight, yeah.
We saw with that Donald Trump-Joe Biden debate just how crucial these moments can be to presidential campaigns. Do you get the sense that this is make or break for Kamala Harris? We've not seen her on a debate stage of this magnitude yet.
That's a good question. Make or break? I hope it's not a break. I think a lot of folks are going to get to know her that don't know her very well. So I'm hopeful that it'll be a positive impression. But again, us folks in California, we know her, but a lot of folks around the country really don't know much about her other than her name. So yeah, I think it's a very, very important night for her.
I'll just bring in Diane now. You're obviously a big fan of the Vice President, I can see via your hat. How key do you think this is for Kamala Harris? And Donald Trump is known for being very combative on these sort of stages. How can she take the fight to him?
Well, I think this is, kind of what my friend had said here, that this is a very critical moment for her to really introduce herself to America, because there's 28% of people that said they still want to know who she is. So this is her opportunity to show her. I'm from Oakland, and where she's from, and we were very proud of her, and she's a very strong, amazing woman in her right. And so I think this is her opportunity to show America who it is. And I think she's going to do well in giving some zingers to him, because we all know, all of us here know him all so well. He's got the same playbook when it comes to these things. He's going to rattle on and say a bunch of lies. And she's going to do it in her very strong way. And she's going to hold her own, and she's going to tell him, you know, this is ridiculous. And she's going to look everybody in the eye and say, do you want this? Is this really what you want?
Are you concerned, Diane, about how she might handle the unscripted moments? We've seen her fumble on occasion when things happen, when she's not quite ready for a certain question.
Yeah, and I will say, I'm nervous, or I said there's going to be a moment, and it's not even going to be even that big of a moment, but it will probably be just some pause or something that she's going to, have to think and, try to, because it is live. But I think she's going to still hold her own. I think she's been a prosecutor in the courtroom for her whole career. She's dealt with all kinds of maniacs and things, so I don't have any doubt that she'll still do well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Thanks, Dan, and thanks, Laura. So everyone here getting ready to watch what is undoubtedly going to be the toughest night of Kamala Harris's political career. Lots of potential stumbling blocks, but lots of potential opportunities too to sell herself and her vision for this country to those people who don't quite have the understanding of who she is, like the people in this room do.
Martha, thanks very much indeed. I'm joined now by the former White House senior advisor for President Trump, Omarosa Manigault-Newman. Thank you for being with us, and you'll be with us on the night itself, I mean the election night itself, and we look forward to that. Now, you know a few things about Donald Trump, so what would Kamala Harris's best strategy be, do you think?
Well, Mark, I've been with Donald Trump on a couple of these debates and helped to prep him and advise him ahead of these debates. And tonight is a high stakes night for both candidates. Now, a lot of attention will be focused on Kamala Harris's performance, and this is a crucial night for her. But as someone who used to live in California for 15 years and had a chance to actually vote for Kamala Harris, I can tell you that she is equipped for this moment. Now, there have been moments in the last 51 days of her candidacy, it's still in its infancy, where we have wanted more from Kamala Harris. Well, tonight is the night for her to deliver, for voters to get to know her. It's crucial that she explains her position. She clarifies those pivots, and some would say where she flip-flopped on certain key issues. But I've seen her in action, and I think that she'll surprise a lot of people who underestimated the vice president.
Of course, the risk is that Donald Trump gets to define Kamala Harris rather than Kamala Harris defining herself.
Yeah, he's not that disciplined. I mean, it'll be very surprising that if he's able to show any type of constraint. He's angry that she is so close to him in the polls. He's upset and he lashes out, as you see on his platform on Truth Social. And so on this stage, asking him to remain measured, calmed, and disciplined is a very difficult task for the president.
Yeah, of course, because Kamala Harris wouldn't be standing on this stage had it not been for the last debate that we saw, the high stakes debate that we saw that effectively pushed Joe Biden out of this race. I guess the question is, will Kamala Harris respond to the kinds of attacks that we're used to seeing from Donald Trump? And he will have, a certain set of words, phrases. He will find ways to goad her, to bait her.
Mm-hmm. To your point, Yalda, I mean, first of all, let's put it in context. That debate was one of the earliest presidential debates we've ever seen. It was prior to even the conventions. And so the fact that it caused Biden to have to fall out of the campaign, I think that's important to put in context. She knows what's on the line. She knows that it's critical for her to deliver. And you're absolutely right. Kamala Harris is going to have to rise to the occasion and show Americans that she has what it takes to lead this country. And it's going to be a heavy task for her, but I believe that she'll deliver.
Is it possible to lay a glove on Donald Trump? I mean, he survives pretty much everything. 2 impeachments, court cases, the Capitol riots, numerous complaints of misogyny. I mean, he survives all this and carries on. And the difference could be that Kamala Harris may not be able to survive a big blow to her should it happen tonight.
Yeah, that's a really important point. There was a nickname that they used to call Donald Trump in New York. They called him Teflon Don because nothing would stick. And so we will see if, in fact, she can find his little trigger points. Now, Donald Trump does have some vulnerable points. You've seen him lash out anytime you question his ability to perform. If you question his wealth, for instance, it's a very sore spot for him. If you question his ability to perform at the presidency, at his job in real estate or business, if you question his level of success, these are trigger points that he just can't help himself. He will lash out at her if she touches on any one of those issues, particularly questions about his wealth.
Yeah, I mean, Omarosa, when we think about the last couple of months, I mean, they have been extraordinary. An assassination attempt, the Republican National Convention, where Donald Trump looked like he was marching towards some kind of victory. And then this twist where, Joe Biden steps aside, Kamala Harris steps in. And so here we are. I mean, this really could go any which way.
It certainly could go anyway. And you know what? One of the things, Yalda, that I think that he squandered was the aftermath of that assassination attempt. He had the hearts of America praying for him and hoping that he recovered. And within 48 hours, he squandered that empathy that America had for him. If there is some way that he can remind Americans that he did survive that harrowing account, then certainly maybe he can tap into some of their sympathies. But I don't think that that's where Donald is going to go. Donald is going to nail her on being the border czar. Donald is going to nail her on their withdrawal, right? Donald is going to try to find these weaknesses that his advisors have tried to get him to remain and focus on. But in true Donald Trump style, I have seen that in these situations, he just isn't able to stay on track. We'll just have to see if he's able to do so tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, look, we may talk to you later, possibly, if not certainly on election night itself. Omarosa, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Well, tonight's debate could be make or break for both candidates who are fighting for the votes of the undecided. But where do the pair stand in the polls right now? Sky's US election data analyst Lewis Goodall takes us through the numbers. Have a look.
This has been a very unusual presidential election for lots of reasons. One of the really weird things about it is that one of the candidates, Kamala Harris, has barely been in it for any length of time at all. Normally, they might have a year or so to bed in. And as a result, let's have a look at our poll tracker here. As a result, we have perhaps less data than we normally would, but we do have some, particularly on this question around net favourability, i.e., do American voters like either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? You basically get all of the people that do like them, and you take away that number from the number of people who dislike them, and then you get net favourability. And you can see we've got this particular bit of data, long time horizon, all the way back to January and before that as well. And one thing you will perhaps notice is that neither Kamala Harris nor Donald Trump have been terribly popular with the American electorate. They're both sort of bumping along the bottom here in terms of net unfavourability, really. And you can see that Kamala Harris has been even more unpopular than Donald Trump, who is himself a very unpopular presidential candidate. You can see Kamala Harris perhaps associated here with all sorts of different problems, including the immigration problem that Biden tasked her to dealing with, generally not a popular political figure. And yet, then something rather miraculous happens, and we've seen it unfold in the last month or so, around this time here in late July, early August, when Joe Biden steps down. It's almost like there is a kind of collective sigh of relief from the American public who have been yearning for, crying out for, a different choice other than Biden, Trump all over again, and are intrigued by Kamala Harris. So she has this golden Democratic National Convention. She enjoys some fantastic media coverage, and her net favourability, guess what, goes up. More American voters decide that actually we quite like the look of Kamala Harris after all. And so you can see she's been enjoying for the last month or so a significant margin, a significant gap here between Donald Trump's favourability number and Kamala Harris. And yet, just in the last couple of weeks or so, the latest data, there is just the sort of first glimmers that perhaps this might not sustain. That after that sort of post-convention glow that she's enjoyed, that some of that sheen is starting to come off, and Kamala Harris's unpopularity or popularity is starting to decline, and Donald Trump's is starting to go up. Perhaps Donald Trump's attack on her as being too liberal, too left-wing and so on is starting to cut through with the American public. One real source of optimism for Harris, though, and one of the reasons this debate is so important, is that most Americans still feel that they don't know that much about her, whereas they know loads and loads about Donald Trump. Everyone's got an opinion on Donald Trump. Kamala Harris still remains a relatively unknown quantity. So if she can introduce herself to the country in this debate, then she still has a good chance. It's one of the many reasons this debate is going to be unusually pivotal and crucial for the Harris campaign.
Lewis Goodall there. Let's return for a final time before the debate to John Scardino, Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad UK, and also Greg Swenson, Chair of Republicans Overseas UK. And Greg, we heard Lewis speak there about immigration.
Yeah.
And it's clear that Trump will go for Kamala Harris on that.
Yeah, and he probably should, because it's the second highest issue for American voters, right? And as I said earlier, he's leading on both the first and second issue, inflation and the border. And it's something that he had handled quite well in his term. So he can look to that. He can compare his record. If this becomes a referendum on his administration versus the Biden-Harris administration on the border, he wins that argument. That's why he's polling, 10 to 20 on that issue.
I mean, the Democrats say that Trump voted or persuaded the Republicans to vote down the border security bill.
There was a handful of Republicans that voted for that, because there is an argument, and I talked to Dan Crenshaw about this, that I just wanted something. I wanted something to pass to change the momentum. However, there are such flaws in that argument. Their argument was, if the crossings are reach 5,000, then we'll shut the border. How about just shut the border, right? So, and Barack Obama's Homeland Security chief argued and did a decent job, at least, trying to convince Obama that if the daily count hit 1,000, that's a crisis. And then Biden proposes 5,000 a day coming across the border. That's not closing the border. That's crazy.
John, I would just bring you into this
because I may have a different opinion.
Because Kamala Harris has been labelled, and Donald Trump is great at labels. He's described her as the border czar, almost as though this whole crisis falls at her sort of feet. How would you respond to all of that?
I think it's an issue that is very revealing about Donald Trump, because this bill that Greg was just outlining really gave an awful lot to the most conservative Republicans in Congress, and it delivered a lot of the things that they had been pushing for. It was led by one of the most conservative evangelical Republicans from the state of Oklahoma, a very conservative state. And the Democrats went an awful long way to try to get a bill done. Donald Trump did come in and he said, no, I want this issue to run on. You got to kill this bill. And all of a sudden, the Republicans were running away from it. So it's a real pity that it happened. That bill gave the funding to finish building Trump's wall. It would have provided more enforcement staff at the border, and it would have provided more immigration officials to find immigrants in the country and deport those who are there illegally. So those are just some of the things this bill would have done. And in a very cynical way, Trump came in and said, let's not do this because I need this. It's one of these visceral issues that we were talking about earlier.
Wanted to weaponize.
I wonder why they waited so long to do it. It's kind of cynical, So let 10 million illegal migrants in, let fentanyl in that's killing people. 100,000 people a year are dying from fentanyl poisoning. I know mothers who've buried their children. And then they decide at the beginning of the election cycle in early 24, let's propose this bill that's still going to let 5,000 a day in. It's just cynical, and it's a horrible tragedy what they've done.
I would just say it had been 4 decades, 40 years since any substantial immigration reform bill has passed. There have been several attempts, so I don't think there was any wait. I think that trying to get the support and initiative going to get it through took an awful lot of effort, and it was led by Republicans.
But the count was down to the 40-year low in Trump's term, by the end of his term. And so, it's cynical that they opened the border on purpose, by the way. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't some new policy. He flipped the switch on every one of Trump's policies, like Remain in Mexico, that was working. So I wonder why they did it. Maybe they wanted more future Democrat voters. Maybe they wanted to elevate the census count in states that are blue. I don't know, but it was cynical and horrible.
Look, there's only 3 or so minutes.
Crisis.
We're only 3 or so minutes left on this, so let's bring it back to the actual debate itself. And what are they going through now? Hillary Rosen said something very interesting. She says debates basically are a lot of boring blather, followed by 90 minutes of sheer panic. and that's
a good one.
And that's probably true.
But, you think about the Biden-Trump debate, and that attracted 50 million viewers across America. In 2020, that debate between Biden and Trump attracted roughly 73 million viewers. We're likely to see a very different sort of approach to this debate, that most Americans probably won't see it. And it will be cut down to memes, viral moments.
Clips.
And although we keep hearing this whole idea around talk about policy, focus on policy, don't attack, appear presidential, at the end of
Could
the
be
day...
one line.
Absolutely.
Or one moment.
Or one moment.
And it will be out on
Captures-
social media before the end of the debate.
Well, exactly
So,
this.
yeah,
So,
I mean,
you know, whether
it's
it
extraordinary.
becomes about that. And James Matthews said, you know, that this is more a manufactured space. No matter how much we think that they've got 90 minutes, it's broken down into 2-minute slots and mics are turned off and they're asked a series of questions. They're asked to respond. So whether that allows them the space to be able to talk about policy.
It's not an Oxford-style debate, right? It is very manufactured. I'd agree with that. And I think that we all might be disappointed because we're coming off the June 27th debate, which was a complete shock, and it ended Biden's presidency ultimately. So it's going to be hard to top that. I would, there might be some theatrics, there might be some drama, a couple of really great clips.
One quick point to get into in terms of the format. We were talking earlier about the technical aspects of this and about the microphones. Not a lot of people may realize this, but the microphones are going to be left off when the other person is speaking. But the candidates can still hear it. So we at home can't hear what the candidate who's not speaking might be saying. Does that make sense? So Harris can hear Trump the entire time, whether his microphone is off or not, and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, it's getting busy in the spin room there.
Yeah, the Trump folks, I understand, have got there quite early and are basically talking to the media and saying this is all about Harris. The pressure is on
already.
Harris. They're spinning already in there.
But I guess that's true. I mean, the real pressure, I guess, is on Kamala Harris.
We know, I guess, what Donald Trump is. He's done 7 of these debates, and it's Kamala Harris who has to present herself to the American people and tell us who she is.
It's a tall order, I think.
All right. Well, it's the countdown. It's on. The big show is next.